Today, I want to walk you through the process of understanding the project charter in a way that you will be able to understand what each element that you see in the project charter document stands for and actually why you really need it. We're going to focus on our project relating to our case study of the Johnson Family Project. I'm Rana Matada, PMP Certified Project Manager. That can be a backbone of a project understanding, and with the ongoing process of actually the project implementation, a lot of documents sometimes gets to be lost in the transitions. Certain people who like to keep adding, they tend to be tempted to add certain things towards the process of the project. Now, the importance of the project charter is also to avoid that, because you've got a big skeleton that actually gives a bit of a direction to where you're going with your project implementation, and to make sure that you stay in the direction of purpose with regard to the project implementation. Now, the Johnson Family Project is the project that is implemented to actually build a double garage for the Johnson family that are staying in Midrand in Johannesburg. The double garage is to serve a purpose for the storage of the tools and equipments, for the safeguard of their cars, which they've got a BMW and a Toyota double cab. Now, what I just did right now is the process which is part of the project chapter, which we call the project title and description. Now, this is more like our start part or our initial part in relation to the project charter. What I just did in explaining what the project of Johnson Family is about, that is what you need to cover when you start off with a project charter document. You need to give a brief background as to what the project is about in terms of the title, what is being built, and a bit of a background around it. Secondly, you're going to put in the part of the project objectives. Now, in the project objectives, this is where now we're talking about the purpose of the project. What is the purpose of the Johnson family actually getting bothered to build a double garage? Why are they not satisfied now with parking their cars outside as they're doing now? It actually came into the picture with the Johnson family because of seeing how the insurance premium are actually going up without having a garage, the risks of their cars actually staying outside, getting into the bad weather conditions and the cars are outside, not to also leave out the part of thieves. You know, you will get this situation whereby the car that is outside it's more accessible than the one that is in the local garage. Now, the objective of this project for the Johnson family is to actually have a constructed double garage, a space for the tools and equipment, improved evaluation, on their property. Now, not that you should be in real estate as much as I'm not, but I know for sure that if I'm getting to see a house or I need to buy a property, I would also consider the part of, do they have a garage? Because when they do have it, it actually drives a bit more of interest to actually purchase that particular house in comparison to the same type of a house without one. Moving further, we're going to move into the part of the business case. Now, the business case part, this is the part that you actually focus on. It's more like a summary of the business case document. As you know, we've already covered the business case, but on this business case part, you re-emphasize a bit of an overview as to why the project is being undertaken, what are the benefits, and perhaps you can also add why not, which is going to address the bit of those conditions that you get to have, a why you should do the project fully, partially, and if you don't do it, you can give it in a more like a description around this document. The other part is giving a scope of the project. What is the scope of the project? Now, the scope is all the activities that will actually have to be done for the project realization in terms of the objectives. Now, there will be a design of the garage, that is like a ground plan. You're going to have the construction of the garage. You're going to have the installations of security features. This can be your doors for closing the garage, the locks around the doors, and such things that actually add the value around guarding in terms of security. And you're also going to have the installation of the tools shelf. As you know, the Johnson family is actually going through a lot in terms of the capacity issues with their house, having to put the tools in the house, and they're not really happy about that. It's also part of the big motive around it. Now you got the part that you call the deliverables. With the deliverables, it's different in terms of the scope in just a margin, because the scope tells you what needs to be done. The deliverables actually stands around the finish line to say, when all is done, what do I need to see? Now that is what differentiates the two. Scope says, I'm going to do that. The deliverable says, I want to see that. So now we're putting into the deliverables to say, we want to see a finished garage, which is a garage built. We want to see the property value, increase, improvement basically, and also we want to see the installation of security features. We want to see that. These are our deliverables. The other thing that we need is the stakeholders. Stakeholders is the part whereby we cover the overview as to who is who in this project. Who is who, and somehow it's more like why is that who there when you go basically to the stakeholder register. That's when you're going to even answer as to why is who there. Because now you're going to put the overview as to who is who. You've got Dana Matada, who's a project manager there. You've got the Johnson family that is part of the stakeholders because they're the end user and they're the actually project sponsors. You've got the contractors that are actually going to be building this project. And now when you go to the stakeholder register, you're going to actually answer this part of why is who. For example, the Johnson family, you're going to have the understanding of their influence and their power into the project. And you're going to see that, oh, they're actually the sponsor team. They're actually the end user. That's why they're giving their suggestion. That's why they're giving their input and all those type of details. Now, I'm trying to get you to think beyond this current project, such that when you go into a different set of project, you can still be able to produce this project charter and actually manage to give the best detail that is actually needed in small document around the project charter. You got the milestone. Now the milestone differs from basically an activity with a duration because the milestone doesn't actually cover the so-called duration. If you're using Microsoft Office, you're gonna see that when you do that, when you put a task and you put a zero duration, you don't have the end and the start, you'll see the Microsoft will actually also acknowledge it as a milestone. So the milestone normally has more like a date that you expect things to be done. You can say on the 5th, I'm expecting foundation to be done. On the 20th, this is gonna be the construction is complete. So this is more like a milestone. It's how you're gonna move around into those big points. It doesn't talk about when you're gonna start and start which one in a sequence like that. It focuses more on the deadlines in a way. The other part that we're gonna focus on is the constraints. Now, constraints is very interesting because you're going to see also who's got the power to say what and what is the governance around the project in the overview. Now, when you talk about constraints, this is when you're going to talk about the project constraint is that the budget control is going to be done by Johnson family. So you can also add to say the project budget should not exceed check issue should be less or equal to 200,000 megs. That is our constraint. Another constraint is that all the procurements will be approved by the Johnson family. The contractor can bring about quotes, but the Johnson family actually will approve all the procurement activities. Now, those are the constraints around the project. You're also going to have the part which is called the assumption. Now, when it comes to assumption, this is the part whereby we actually going to assume things like we're not going to be disturbed by the weather conditions. We're going to retain the skilled labor throughout the project. Now, when you say you're going to retain the skilled labor throughout the project, that means that when you go through this with your contractor and they also approve this, should it happen that during the course of your project, now the contractor wants to move that leader in terms of it's either a team leader or it's someone who's more experienced in the bricklayer team, and they have a situation somewhere else and they want this specific person to actually go and fix the issues that on the other side. Should that happen, now you sit down with the contractor to actually acknowledge the issue log, because this becomes an issue in your project, because in the assumption you actually had an acknowledgement with the contractor that we are not going to have this type of an issue. Now you're having it, that means that it falls under the issue log register. We're going to get into that in later stages. Now you're going to also have the so-called risks. Now risks is a very broad subject, but here you give it in the overview. Because I know that when you talk about risk, especially when you get the pessimistic people, they will really want to cut it down to the very finest nail about all that can go wrong in the project. In overview, we're going to talk about the weather conditions that can be risky and actually lead to a delay in our project. Budget overruns. A lot of times, the money that is being budgeted for and the money that actually gets to be spent, it gets to differ sometimes. And in a lot of times, it's not because it can't be avoided. At times, it's because of the negligence and lack of monitoring and control, timely so. Now, you're going to have the part of the signages or approvals as to who approves what. At what stage do we need a certain approval? And when the project is in the closing phase, who's going to actually give that $1 million signature to say the project is done? Now, this should also be covered. And for you to understand the approval part, you need to go back again to understand who is who in terms of the stakeholders. Once you understand who is who in terms of the stakeholders, it will even give you a better picture to document this and say, this is the person that we're gonna actually approve this certain part, because you already understand why this certain person is coming into the picture about the project. From this, you should be able to understand what are the benefits of the project charter. And on our blog at stratopsvolt.com, we're gonna actually update the document that has got more detail in relating to the Johnson family part, and you can use that as your main skeleton and put some meat differentiating based on your project. With the document that you're going to have, it's going to be some sort of a format that you can use and actually change it as you see fit for your project. But this video is very crucial for you to understand these concepts before you can actually just go edit the format that we actually have updated on the blog. I urge you to go through this process, test your understanding around it, and actually make sure that you understand this part. And going forward, you can be able to even merge different templates, because you'll have the background understanding around this. Thank you. Stay tuned. We're going to move further to the other documents that is going to cover the scope and other knowledge areas that needs to be covered for this project success.